G'day guys, welcome back to SuperCoach with DR and welcome to the Round 8 Stock Market video. An interesting round in SuperCoach last week, some big decisions on our hands. Do we double downgrade? Do we go one up, one down? I don't think there are going to be too many coaches that are looking to go two up. There certainly may be, different circumstances for different people, but I think this is a week where we at least need to go one down. The two men up the top of the chart here, Caleb Poulter and RCD, I think they could be two really solid options. In the middle, I've put Matt Flynn because it's a time or a stage during the season where we need to decide, well, what are we going to do with this bloke? Are we going to hold him to the buys, maybe get one more price rise out of him? Are we going to flip him this week? There's arguments either way for that. So it's going to be really interesting what your plans are for Matty Flynn. And the two men down the bottom, Lockie Whitfield, coming into his third game. He's going to drop in price. Pretty big break even this week. Maybe a tempting trading option possibly after his buy. And unfortunately, the big Texan, well, he's gone from glory to a bit of nothing, hasn't he? Because he dropped a 20-odd score over the weekend, and all of a sudden, that cash that he made, you're starting to lose it now. So, in my opinion, I think that you've got to look really, really closely at trading out the big boy this week. So, I'll get straight into it because I'm pretty busy this week, as I've mentioned. And as always, let's go with the premium defenders. The man up the top, Callum Mills, returned to his midfield role on the weekend and smashed it out of the park. This bloke's got a fantastic ceiling, and due to his current form, price point and break even, I've got him as my best buy in our defence this week. Now, the issue is if you've got some other popular round 14 defenders like your Seagull, Laird, May, then it may be hard to bring him in before the buy. It may even be a choice between him and the Seagull. We'll go down to him because I also have the buy now symbol on the Seagull. Now, he hasn't been this cheap for years. Look, his ceiling certainly declines, and we're not seeing consistent 120 type scores like the old days, but he's still a very reliable defender, great scoring history, and he still is a Seagull. He really was back to his best on the weekend, racking up those free chips, scoring a 111, which was nice, but we want some sauce and extra chicken salt on those chips for a really nice 125 plus score. But I think either one of the Sydney boys are going to be good buys this week. Richie, I've been pumping up his tyres for the last month and he still remains a pod. I suppose I can't complain because I'm not known to myself, but again, should have backed my own gut and judgment and traded him in for a nice point of difference. His role is just so consistent, good for a goal around the back from time to time, but teams are starting to catch on to that. We all know what his main attribute is. He's raking left foot, and we also know that he takes the highest percentage of kick-ins with Birchall taking leftovers. Look, not a must trade in and certainly no desperation to bring him in now, but I think he'll be a really consistent defensive option with low ownership and a half-decent ceiling. So all for bringing in Richie if you want. The Doc, still annoyed we only got a pick in the 30s for this bloke when Carlton bent us over the table, but he's actually having a really decent year. You know, Sard's playing like a bench option in the local under-11s team at the moment, and Doherty's getting a fair share of the ball and has a nice kick-to-handball ratio, averaging as much as Rory Laird to put his body of work into perspective. So I think I now have to concede that he's a half-decent option. Not for me, and the Doc is far from a lock, but I have to respect what he's been doing lately. Luke Ryan, not at this stage, been injured and not even sure on his recovery date, but not in many people's plans at this stage, I don't think. Rory Laird, great performance over the weekend in the showdown, can hold his head high, very handy 125, which has helped to slightly boost his season average up to 104, but doesn't 105 look a whole lot nicer for some reason? Oh, look, I don't think he's really worth discussing too much because basically everyone I know already has him, and we're all just hoping that he continues to play well, I suppose. Seagull, talked about him before. Yeah, good buy, I think. Tommy Stewart, ripped off by champion data this week. Look, disclaimer, maybe own a bias here, but had 25 possessions. Yeah, a couple of clangers in there, but he just did the usual Tom Stewart stuff, and I'm really happy with his 92 because there's no negative signs whatsoever. He is really a bite now at any time, I think. I keep on repeating this, but he'll go between 90 and 120 basically every day of the week. Really nice buy, but question is, do you bring him in now given the fact that he does have the first buy, or wait until after that and welcome him to your team in round 13? Unfortunately, I can't answer that question for you. Depends on your buy structure. Look, you shouldn't go below 525 and probably shouldn't go above 575. So with his scoring patterns and consistency and a half monster score like his 150 thrown in every now and then, this should be enough to enable him to hover around that range, I think, for the rest of the season. Christian Salem, similar to Doherty, have to give him some respect now. He's actually a really good player. In career best form, I think, has a nice distributing role down back. I'd just much rather go Mills or Seagull, who also share the same round 14 bye, and they're around the same price point. For some reason, I feel I can just trust them a little bit more. But he's a really nice pot option, though, if you're looking to stray away from the pack. And Lockie Whitfield, no way we bring him in now with an average in the 70s and a break even in the 170s, but maybe the perfect upgrade after his bye. Could potentially be cheap, but could potentially hit form and get that price rising once again. Not for now, but keep him firmly on your watch list. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k. Man up top, James Harmes, looked great last week with a nice 132, but he did look ordinary the week before. I was looking at him pre-season, but probably a little bit too risky for mine. But obviously no Viney helps him. Jordan Butts, I don't even want to talk about him. Wish he was still on the side. If you haven't watched my round review, you'll know what I'm talking about if you take a look at that. Stephen May played a great game on Buddy on the weekend. Didn't necessarily translate to a great SuperCoach score, but did take some kickouts as we expected him to do. In about, it was about a quarter and a half. I reckon midway through the second quarter, he was on about 45 points and only ended up on a 77. So really slowed up his scoring in the second half. But look, we paid 400k for this bloke. We have to expect this from time to time, but I'd be expecting him to bounce back with a bigger score this week. And it was a really important role that he did have to play on Buddy. So look, I'm okay with that score, but obviously not too happy. Jacob Weddering, so he's crept up on me, this fella, but if you do look at the 3-round average of 121, that is largely due to the fact that he got a massive 156 over the weekend. But even that season average of 98, well, it isn't too bad. And if you compare this man, Jaden Short, who I've got on my side, he's got exactly the same season average. So who would have thought that Weddering would be averaging as much as Shorty? Certainly not me anyway. Caleb Daniel. So I've got the watch on him. He's 434,500, average of 83, 3-round average of 98, which is looking pretty healthy. We just don't know where he's going to be playing his football. He's been, rotated up forward, then went back in the last quarter last week after not looking overly great. So, look, I'm finding it really hard to get a read on him. So, I can't give a heap of advice on Caleb Daniel. I'm steering clear myself. I'm obviously not in need of a premium defender anyway, but yeah, so hard to get a read on him. Just not sure. I went May last week over Daniel. Don't know if that was even the right move. We'll just have to wait and see, I think. Cozzy, now, it's interesting because his projected scores 58, break even of 60. What do you do with him? I'd probably keep for one more week because he does love playing in Tassie and the Hawks are playing against North. So these are good signs for Gozzy to kick another bag this week. I'm not guaranteeing he's going to kick another bag, but even if he bags 3, I think that'll be pretty decent and he will make a little bit more money as well as give you a pretty decent on-field option, you'd think anyway. Darcy Moore. Now, here's an interesting selection at his price. Obviously a change of role and moving forward, that led to a steep decline in his SuperCoach scoring output. But he went back to defence last week and went bang with a brilliant performance. I've heard some interviews with Collingwood players, and when asked about Moore's best position, they all said in defence with no hesitation. And one even mentioned that they think the experiment's over. Now, obviously, whoever it was that said it, Collingwood player, they don't have much of a say when it comes to team selection, but good signs, I suppose. He did open the season in all-Australian form and dominated the first couple of games, but things went sour with a role change and he became completely irrelevant. If you skipped May last week and are looking for a value gamble, then Moore could be an option, a risk, but he has a lot of upside down back. I wouldn't run with both May and Moore, for example, given the fact they share the same buy as it is, but I wouldn't be comfortable with them at D6 and D5 because there's just too many other better and more consistent options, I think. But I'm okay with having one of them there, but the role change risk is real. So up to you if you trust Bucks, I suppose. Jaden Short, so I do have the buy now symbol on him, just given the fact that we know what this man can produce, and he's at 475k. So for me, that is really good value for what Short can produce. We see that break even of 69, so even if he goes 100, he's not going to make a heap of cash or go up a lot, so you might be able to wait another week on him. But if you are looking for a trade in this week in your defence, I think Short at his price is a pretty good selection. Has let us down on the odd occasion this year, but again, has a massive ceiling, and hopefully we can see a little bit more of that. Maynard, I still think is a trap. Did have a nice 133 over the weekend, but 3-round average is the same as his season average now, 81. Nothing to write home about whatsoever. Jack Bowes, so a decent pick, but probably not as good as what we first thought. But if you've got him in your side, you're certainly not worried. You're pretty happy with that. He's got a 104 average on the season, 3-round average of 98. So obviously looking at that 3-rounder, he's not in terrific form. But again, 98 is okay at this stage. Blake Hardwick, just chucking his name out there, as I do most weeks, as a pod selection. Similar 3-round average to someone like a Bowes, but he's losing about 8 points on that season average. And Bowes is only, 9k more. So Bowes probably the better pick there, you'd say. CJ, so we were worried about him last week, weren't we? But a ripper game on the weekend. A slight possibility you could get away with having him at your, or as your D6 for the rest of the season. I'm not too sure on that, but if you're running low on trades, then that could be an option. Certainly don't look to trade him out at this stage, and you certainly don't look to trade him in. Crispy, now, this is really interesting because he attended 25 out of 28 CBAs over the weekend. Now, that's fantastic. That's really, really good. You know, traditionally, if we've got numbers like that, CBA numbers, and the player is available in our defensive or forward lines, then it's a bit of a no-brainer selection. Just get him in. But, you know, with Crisp, it's just one of those picks where he's just always hovering around the mark. And he's not a sexy selection. He's ultra durable. That's something that's definitely in his favour. Look, if he keeps this roll up, will he continue to pump out decent enough scores? Look, possibly. But how many blokes have you already discussed that have that round 14 bye? It's basically impossible to go with someone like a Crisp at this stage, according to most of the teams that I see around, because you're going to be killed during that tough bye. So maybe after the bye, if he's at a decent price and those CBAs are right up, but probably not coming into my calculations. Aaliyah, chuck him out there as a pod. Ridley, man, so look, it's an interesting decision. You can bring him in, but my recommendation with Ridley is to wait one more week. Look, I don't think he's going to reach that break even of 119. Don't get me wrong, I would love to see it. I would certainly love to see it, but even if he goes, let's just say a 140, he's still going to be just under 500k. So I'd simply wait till we see some decent form from Ridley. Just hasn't been himself after his concussion before you look to bring him in. So I have him on the watch list at the moment, and unfortunately for myself as an owner, maybe not a must-have. And Dan Houston, the man at the bottom there, I've got the injury symbol on him because I'm not sure if he gets up for this week, but he's been an interesting selection. You know, some change in roles, switching from the midfield to the back line. I don't mind him as a player. He's got a nice ceiling, good scoring potential, but if we don't know if he's going to get up this week, it's hard to include him in your plans. But I suppose similar to Ridley, wait and see how he goes. You know, if he knocks out a couple of good scores, then maybe look to jump on. But yeah, has a nice buy if you're an owner. Definitely don't look to trade him out, because I think even if he misses this week, it's only going to be short term. I could be wrong on that. I could be very wrong on that, but I think that's the case. So if it's only looking like he's going to be out for a week, definitely hold. He's a certain hold. And if you're not an owner, I'd just assess this pick in another couple. And on to the defenders under 250k. Not a whole lot to see here, even though we do have three blokes on the bubble at the top of the list. Tommy Highmore, we all know the story with him by now. Nick Murray, not great job security. Does he even play this week? I'm not too sure. Harry Edwards as well. I'm just not sure about that job security. So, yeah, there's not a heap of interest there from me. Look, Luke Parks, I actually do really like his job security. And I did notice that as soon as he came back from injury, he was straight back into the Carlton side. So, probably underrated him slightly as a rookie selection. Nathan Murphy. Now, if you want to hear about a rookie mistake and a rookie error from me, go back to my round review and listen to that story involving Murphy and Jordan Butts. Still absolutely shattered by it. Murphy was looking so good at halftime, scoring well in a nice role, but sometimes he's too courageous for his own good, this bloke. Did make some money, will make some money when he comes back. Obviously missing this week, which makes it difficult if you are running him at a D6. So, yeah, a frustrating week for Murphy owners, but I'm pretty sure that this bloke will come good and be a pretty solid selection for us going forward. Mark Keane mentioned last week, and someone did take note of the pun, that I wasn't too keen on him. Jackson Pryor, again, the ship sailed there. Going to be a really slow burn, I think, from here on out. Even though he's got a break-even of 7, I don't think there's going to be a heap more cash to make. Frederick, Kenny Hinkley just killed this bloke. Oh, Kenny. How frustrating. But, oh well, he's probably not going to be viable to bring him into your side now. And Mansell, I'm a Mansell owner, and I'm worried because I think he comes out of the side this week. He was really fumbly and really did look like a first-year player during some crucial stages last week. So I'm not expecting him to be playing, and I may be forced to even look to trade this bloke out if I'm going to be looking at a possible donut. So a massive decision from me. Certainly not a great move to trade him out this week. I'm not recommending that. But in my personal circumstances, it may be my only option to avoid a donut. So something I really need to weigh up this week. But I suppose in a nutshell, no one here that I overly like bringing into your side. On to the midfielders, 500k plus. Up the top, we have the Tarantula, now with a 3-round average of 122. This is another pick that I need to show a little bit more respect for because he's turned out to be a pretty good starting selection at his price point. A 127 on the weekend, included 29 disposals, 8 tackles, which is pretty impressive. And that shows that he's working hard. You know, his contested possession count was lower than average, but he did use the ball at 75%, which isn't bad for Taranto. Currently, I think the number 1 midfielder at GWS, and they're in pretty good form, so maybe pushing for a top 15 midfield average by the end of the year. Still probably a level below our ultra premiums, though, I think. Andrew Gaff had the ball on a string on the weekend with a pretty dominant performance, but he's burnt me in the past, and personally, I find it pretty hard to trust him. But a pod for sure, in good form, but I just don't really like any of the Eagles' mids. Not Nuba, but probably tier 2 or 3. Titch, finally, this man delivers. Oh, man, it's been tough being a Titch owner for the past 6 weeks. You know, he's racking up the pill, but just producing mediocre scores, which have really hurt. But 41 possessions over the weekend, pretty much standard Titch, we know that. But his disposal efficiency was exactly the same as his time on ground, which was 82%. Finally, he actually used the ball well. Had a huge first quarter, 10 possessions, couple of intercept marks, some tackles sprinkled in there as well. But most importantly, went at 90% efficiency. And this gave him a ripper start with a 41-point first quarter. And for the first time in a long time, he kept on scoring well. And it was evident that he was more damaging with his disposal. Still some of those standard Titch backwards handballs, but overall, I think his stats were more meaningful. 17 contested possessions, 6 clearances thrown in, which was nice, but, as usual, low meters gained. Think it was under 300, and a very high handball to kick ratio. He looked $1 million on the weekend, but still a buy with caution, as champion data have not been a fan of Titch this year. And before this week, his disposal and decision making have been a little bit off. So you can buy now if you like, but do buy with caution, I think. Jolly, the prayer to the Supercoach God seemed to have worked, as his role's been flipped and is now playing through the midfield. As you can see there, his CBAs have risen. The current price point for Josh Kelly, the midfielder, is an absolute bargain, even with his durability concerns, and I would still gobble him up at this price. But the question is, are we trading in Jelly the midfielder, or are we trading in Jelly the forward? The only man that knows is Lyons Cameron, and he's a man that we certainly cannot trust. So as tempting as it is, a return to the forward line is too real for me, so a pass. Rory Laird, getting older, but still a warrior and a guy you just love to go into battle with, laid 10 tackles in the showdown, and that says a fair bit about him. Only managed to find the pill 20 times, about half were contested though, and low efficiency at 60% really hurt him here. Brandon Ellis, his lowest score for a long time, probably a pod that you won't consider. Great year from him though. Jared Lyons, if you have been following the stock market videos this year, you'll know how I feel about this bloke. Been pumping up his tyres for a long time, and it's turned out to be for good reason. People are finally starting to take note and give this guy the respect he deserves. A consistent, reliable scorer who steps up when required, tough, hard, a big body, and our number one inside midfielder at the moment in Lockheed Mcneil's absence. Has not gone under the ton this year. Talk about being consistent. Really decent ceiling with high scores of 139 and a 145. In the past, has dropped a couple of stinkers, but that's not looking likely at the moment, particularly with Neil out of the side. His ownership will surely have to rise as the season progresses, and I say jump on board the Lions train. Just love this bloke. Thank you so much, Gold Coast. Libba brought his name up in the stocky as soon as the Dunkley news filtered through, and look at that 3-round average. The man that was most likely to benefit from Dunkley's absence due to his crash and bash, contested style of play. If you're looking for an ultimate pod who basically no other teams have, then he could be an option. Would I do it? No, because he already has 2 teammates ahead of him that are basically top 8 locks for me, and just too risky in my opinion. This man, Huey Mccluggage, been a lot of talk about him. The Rolls Royce, currently in the top 20 for overall points in the comp. Unlucky to miss out an All-Australian selection in 2019 and 2020, but surely he's got to have one of the All-Australian wing spots sewn up at the moment. Look, what we were looking for from Hugh, from a Supercoach perspective, was to improve his consistency. Last year had scores of 60, 66, a couple of 74s. In round 1 this year even, a disappointing 68. But over the last 5 weeks, has not gone below the ton and has a 5-round average of 123, which is elite. Role hasn't majorly changed, but he's spending some more time or extra time on the inside. I think a lot of his improvement has come down to natural progression as an early pick, as well as greater body strength. Now he's able to break more tackles and find more of the contested ball. He's not blessed with blistering speed, but he always seems to have time and space, similar to Scott Pendlebury, one of the most popular professional players at the club, and he works extremely hard on the track, which has led to greater endurance also. Look, even as a junior, he was a goal-kicking mid that impacted the scoreboard. This year he's kicked a goal in 7 out of 8 games, which is really impressive, particularly playing off a wing. I don't think Lockheed Mcneil's absence has affected him really in a positive or a negative way. So when he eventually comes back, I don't think there's any great concern. The only issue is the fact that we haven't seen premium numbers on a consistent week-to-week basis from him before. But if his last 5 weeks are anything to go by, that may change this year. A young man, one of my absolute favourites. I think I've mentioned this before, but my little fella Max loves Hugh, his favourite player, and half our pets are named after him. And it gets quite confusing. We've got a cat named Hugh, a fish named Hugh, and a hermit crab named Hugh. So certainly a popular name in our household. I'd say that there are some safer options out there, but this man is absolutely elite and is fast becoming one of the best 2-way running mids in the comp. Just oozes class and would be an absolute lock for me if he could slightly increase his CBA rate. I think it's fine to trade him in if looking for a pod, but still may throw in an 80 type score from time to time. And if I was the opposition coach and I was playing a tagger, the first man I'd look to lock down is this man, Huey Mccluggage. So a little bit of risk attached with the Huey selection, but you can't deny his last 5 weeks. The Bont, now 7th overall for total points after a massive 155 on the weekend. A bloke that loves to step up in the big games and absolutely dominated the last quarter on the weekend. If I could select a team from scratch, he'd be close to my first pick midfielder. It'd be hard to go past, Walsh or Rao given their age. But, look, with the Bont, he does tend to have an off game here and there, which usually allows you to bring him in around the 550 mark. But his last 6 weeks have been really good. 116, 133, 127, 107, and as I mentioned before, a 155 against the Blues. Dunkley's absence hasn't affected him. And as well as tending a lot of CBAs, he's also averaging over a goal a game. So his goal kicking accuracy has actually improved, which has helped him to maintain a nice average. Remember last year, just a terrible kick for goal. I forget how many behinds he kicked, but yeah, so many more than goals. Look, he doesn't have an easy fixture in the next 6 weeks. Comes up against Port, then the Saints, then the top ladder D's. That'll be a cracker, won't it? Freo away, Geelong down at the Cattery, and then West Coast over at WA. So no real easy opponents at easy venues, but I think he should still score well. I'm all for trading in the Bont whenever the time is right, I think. Joel Selwood, amazing season to date, but far too old for my liking. And with the Mr. Burns symbol, I'll just splash the extra cash and go Guthrie if you want a Geelong player. Luke Parker, just not interested, and pretty boring pick. Clary, highly recommend this man as an option. I'm really happy as an owner and glad I started him. Will deliver basically every week, massive ceiling, and we've seen some 170 to 200 type scores in the past. Not that type of year this year, I don't think, but the point is that he can go really big. Still a young man coming into his prime, but a proven scorer with uber premium history and close to a must-have, in my opinion, anyway. And Andy Brayshaw, a really disappointing game from him over the weekend. Most disappointing was the fact that he wasn't tagged. There was a slight change in role coming off the wing at times rather than starting on the inside, but did not use the ball well. I did mention in my round review, had a Tom Phillips type game with the ball, but look, I think this young man will bounce back. I got him for under 500k, so you do have to expect some lower scores from time to time. But as I did say, the disappointing thing was that it wasn't due to a tag. I could live with that, I suppose, a little bit more if that was the case. But I don't think it's panic stations with Brayshaw. Sometimes you get what you pay for, but I still truly believe that we got him at close to a bargain price. Cam Guthrie, it's time to start recommending this bloke. Credit where credit's due, because Guthrie has had a phenomenal year. In the top 5 for total points, only gone under the ton once, and has scores of 124, 163, 144, and a 132 to his name. So a fantastic ceiling. No danger anytime soon. Selwood performing well, but getting older. Still a relative pod, and has a first buy, which most people are going to get through pretty easily, I think. I really can't fault this pick at the moment, and have probably dismissed him due to his lack of uber scoring history. But he is Geelong's best mid at the moment, playing extremely consistent football, and is a really hard worker. Only kicked the 1 snag for the year, so it'd be great if he could even kick a goal once every 2 weeks, but really hard to fault the pick, as I said. I say get him in with confidence, and apologies to Cam for not giving him enough credit during the year. Trav Boak, great game in the showdown, didn't translate into a fantastic Supercoach score, but does have a nice buy, same as Guthrie. I worry slightly about his age, has missed a game through injury already this year, so I think there are probably safer bets, but still wouldn't completely write him off. Touk Miller, actually wrapped that he's been rubbed out this week, because he's always been a thorn in Dane Zorko's side and takes him to the cleaners in most Q clashes. So I know this week, but a massive pod to consider later on. Nat Fyfe finally kicked a goal on the weekend after about 50 behinds this year. You know how I feel about him. Elite player, massive ceiling, can make the impossible seem possible, but a midfielder with questionable durability with a round 14 bye, it doesn't work for me at this stage. But post bye, I'd have a closer look at him. Mitch Duncan looks similar to Guthrie, probably need to give him a little bit more credit for his performance this season, but there's no way that I would fork out over 600k for this bloke and pass on the likes of Bont, Lyons, and his teammate Guthrie. Probably personal bias, but I don't really like Duncan as a selection. But His 600k price tag says otherwise though. Sammy Walsh, officially Carlton's best midfielder by a fair margin now. Super season to date, but his first real failure over the weekend. And keep in mind, 82, it's not a stinker. We can all live with that after what he's produced for us in 2021. The 5th highest averaging mid with scores of 144, couple of 130s over the last month. An interesting fact was that it was his equal lowest disposal count for the year with a 24. And he also had a 24 against the Gold Coast. And on both occasions, he scored an 89. So identical scores there. A concern is that he has given away 13 free kicks this year. So it'd be great if he could clean that up. He's kicked a couple of goals lately, but still only 3 for the year. So that could help to boost his scoring. But I'm still a very happy owner. A tough midfield to come up against this week, but I'm expecting him to step up and be one of Carlton's best again. Will be a top 10 mid in 2021, in my opinion. Zeret, this is what we wanted to see. Played a belter in his 150th. Gave me a 130 plus score that I'd been looking for all year. Amassed 37 disposals, 70% efficiency. A little bit low, but not a disaster. Kicked 2 behinds also, so that 131 could have been much closer to 150. He's had a really solid month, and based on current form, could potentially be a top 8 to 10 mid from here on. David Mundy, most of the Supercoach community have just been waiting for this bloke to drop in form, but he stayed really consistent and defied most people's expectations. I couldn't bring him in myself, but for the few Mundy owners, you'll be stoked with his season to date. Chalor, I'd 100% go Bonta McRae over him. All 3 in your midfield's a bit overkill in my opinion. The Pies are really missing him though, but their loss, Dogs gain. Jack Steele, man, I wish he didn't have the round 14 bye. That's super frustrating. He's been down on usual production over the last few weeks, but such a wonderful player, and next week will be at a really tasty price for his potential scoring output. Only 3-round average of 102, and to put it into perspective, Carl Amon has a better 3-round average than that. Has been playing up forward at stages, but we all know what he does best, and that is to tackle like a madman, win contested pill, and also hit the scoreboard. Saints have had a below par year to date, I'd say, but the man of steel can certainly hold his head high. Does have a nice ceiling. We've already seen a 3-round patch of 123, 132, and 150, where he was priced around the 650 mark, but scores of 104, 105, 91, and 100 over last month have now sent his price sub 600k. Great price for potential output, but you can still wait a week or 2 if you want. The cement bag, well, he's had an inconsistent season to date, hasn't he? Question marks over whether or not he can average in the top 10 mids from here on out. Has 3 teammates in Gawn, Oliver, and Salem who are all averaging more, and he's only actually gone above 100 on 3 occasions this year with a nice 146, a 133, and a 108. But we don't really like to select Uma Primos, particularly in our midfield, when they struggle to go, 100 plus. So I know from me, and I'd only look to trade in if his value and form is too hard to ignore. And down the bottom, Jack McRae. As a non-owner, this bloke has killed me this season. The number 1 mid in the game, but thankfully over the past fortnight has come back down to earth somewhat with scores of 107 and 106, which are actually his 2 lowest scores of the year. You can lock him in for a 30-plus disposal game each and every week without hesitation. Likes to kick rather than handball, which is a positive, and really likes junk time, does Jack McRae. He's the sort of bloke that could go close to that massive break even this week, but depending on how he goes this week, he could be at his lowest price point for a fair while. The buys are coming up, which makes the decision tougher if you don't have him, but ideally I'll look to bring him in directly after his buy. An absolute must-have this year, and a decent captaincy option to match most weeks as well. On to the midfielders, 250, 500k. Look, I've got to be honest, there is literally no one on this list that I'm interested in, and not a lot of players that deserve a heap of discussion. I haven't included some players from previous weeks, such as, your Simpkins, Hopper, Bailey Smith types, but we'll take a quick look at some options. Drew, way too risky, capable player at the level though. Zach Jones, just couldn't do it. James Jordan had close to 20 contested possessions on the weekend. Thought he was on track for a really nice 100-plus score, but unfortunately didn't use the ball overly well. He did tackle really well, though, and with Viney out, he's moved up the Melbourne midfield ranks. has a more friendly role now, and with the scores he's punching out, my plan is to hold him up until round 13 and then flip him before his bye. Tom Green, no, liked him pre-season. Will be a midfield beast one day, not this year though. Warple just doesn't use the ball well enough. Tries hard every week though. Sheed looks really good some weeks, others a bit mediocre. Tally, look, he tempts you from time to time with some nice scores here and there, but tends to cop tags and just not a consistent scorer with a ceiling high enough to take the punt. Upside isn't there for me. Tommy Powell, what a super rookie. Love this bloke, and at this stage I'm planning on holding him for as long as I can to take advantage of his on-field score each week. His break-even is creeping higher, but no reason to trade him out now in my opinion. Rising star is a real possibility for the young man, just one of those players that knows how to find the pill. Errol is now firmly on the chopping block after a blistering start to the season. He's now slowing up a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a rest in the next couple of weeks. Now, there are some different schools of thought as to what to do with Golden. You can either keep him as an on-field rookie option up until his bye, use him as cover for rounds 12 and 13, or you can chop him now and move him up or down to avoid leaking more cash. Sydney do have a nice month coming up fixture-wise, which may sway you to keep him, but I traded him last week and pretty happy with that decision. Personal circumstances, though, I think will dictate what you do here. Cal Ward, the cement head, not considering him, no real major upside. Dyson Heppel, don't trade him in, don't trade him out. Carl Amon, really underrated player, but I don't think he'll average enough to be one of, our 8 midfield options, I don't think. And Patrick Cripps, I'm so glad I don't own this bloke. I think we can now all agree that this has been a failed selection, and if you're in a position to move him on, I think it's time to part ways with the Carlton captain. No positive signs to hang on to apart from previous premium history. Looks tired, looks slow, and looks sore. And given the fact he started the third quarter on the bench and stayed there for 8 minutes, it could have been the fourth quarter, I can't remember. That's a massive red flag for me. You want your captain out there during the crucial stages of the match, and given the fact he wasn't out there means something just isn't right. So get rid of him if you can, and the game will become a lot less stressful from week to week for you, I think. And on to the midfielders under 250k. The best buy this week, in my opinion, is RCD. With injuries, a lot of injuries down at Punt Road, RCD's job security, that's become a whole lot better. First week looked really good with the score in the 70s, but a poorer score this week. Didn't look as productive as he did in round 1, but Richmond got flogged, so can't expect much from a 2-game rookie. But at the same time, it was a chance for him to really step up and impress. He's a big-bodied midfielder, likes to tackle, will attend CBAs, get some contested possessions, doesn't use the ball overly well, but his role is certainly friendly for SuperCoach, and surely with the injury carnage at Richmond, he holds his spot for the next 3 to 4 weeks. But when the Lamberts, Prestias, Boltons, Cotchins, someone else, Titch Edwards, when these blokes come back, I think his spot is in real jeopardy, and he may not be there to cover during the buys. So I still recommend him, as he should make some decent cash over the next month, but the relationship may be cut short, and be prepared for him to potentially be playing reserves football again in a few weeks, particularly if he doesn't perform overly well. But short term looking good, and hopefully he can get back to that round 1 form. I think the next best buy probably after him is Ryan Burns. I rate him as a player, but I'm not too sure about his job security. It's okayish, I think, but yeah, I'm finding it pretty hard to get a read on Burns. So, look, if you've already got RCD, you could get Burns in, but I'd probably recommend someone over Burns that you can select in your midfield that's not on this list. A man in our forward line with some mid-forward DPP status. Lockheed Mcneil, great score from him over the weekend. Break-even is now all the way back down to 1. Lots more money to make. Charlie Lazaro, well, yeah, just keep him on the watch list. A bit of a pod rookie this year anyway. Tanner Bruin, yeah, failed selection. Chop him when you can. Sam Berry, now, he's just one of those warm bodies that we've got at the moment. Break glass in case of emergency. I think just doesn't find enough of the ball. But again, he is a warm body. I know that my benches at the moment are pretty bare, and there's not too many rookies that are actually playing. So you may choose to select to trade out someone like a Brockman if you've got him in your midfield, for example, because he's not playing at the moment, and keep on to a Berry because at least you've got someone there. But for me, I think that he is right for the chop at the moment. You know, his break even is 36, which is in green, but his 3-round average is 40 and his season average is 51. So don't expect great scores from Berry. If you want to get rid of him, I think that's fine. And Will Phillips, I'd just be getting rid of this bloke, to be quite honest. You know, job security is a concern anyway. He's a really talented bloke. We know his junior numbers, but yeah, it just hasn't translated into relevant Supercoach scores for us this year. So happy to chop Bruin, Berry, Phillips. RCD the best buy with Burns next in line. Keep on to Mcneil and Lazaro at this stage, I think. On to the rucks. The man up the top, Jordan Sweet, is the only ruckman on the bubble this week, but you may be a little salty, I think, if you trade him in, because he will only play if English or Steph Martin are unavailable. Would be ideal if you had the DPP status, but unfortunately not the case. You could trade him in for Flynn, but I'd be looking for a loophole option such as Tracy myself with that DPP, because I think a few of us may be looking to trade in Marshall after the bye. Tom Campbell had a decent couple of weeks, but we aren't going to pay 240k for him. Flinny, clearly the number 2 ruck for GWS at the moment, with Mummy taking the number 1 mantle for now. Super frustrating. We're expecting him to be over 400k at this stage, but hasn't panned out that way. Who saw this from Mummy coming? It's certainly not me. Such a tempting trade-out option, but I'm going to hold out for at least one more price rise. We should get 1 or 2 before his bye. Thilthorpe couldn't back up his score from round 1, but that was expected. Handy DPP, but missed the boat, if the boat was even there at all. McAvoy, not in the ruck, but possibly a massive pod in our defensive lines. Nick Nat, underwhelming season and 3-round average. Not really a viable selection, same as Sean Darcy. Grundy, a non-negotiable, must have. Get him in if you don't. Not much more to say about that. We all know what Grundy's about. Nank, a solid ruckman, but not really Supercoach relevant. Rob, too hot, too cold to be a decent selection. And Big Maxi, a below par couple of weeks, but I'm expecting him to dominate against the second string Carlton Rucks this weekend and firmly in my captaincy plans. Look, if for some reason you don't have him, he'll be at his lowest price point for the year next week, you'd assume. Jackson seems to be affecting his scoring slightly due to his extended time in the ruck, but the definition of a must-have, and it's so scary not to own him when you know that a 200 type score might be just around the corner. So, to put this really simply, you just need to have both Gawn and Grundy in your side sooner rather than later. I honestly wouldn't be considering any other ruckman on this list. Just get the 2 big G's in. On to the forwards, 500k plus. Geez, such a sad state of affairs here. 3 blokes we can't currently select. 1 bloke who we all have in Zeeble. So we're left with really one option here, and that's Big Rowan. Wouldn't it be ideal if he had the round 12 or 13 bye? He'd be wonderful ruck cover using some of that DPP action, but unfortunately he does have the dreaded round 14 bye. An absolute killer. To be honest, he was one of my preseason lock and throw away the key type picks. Literally every version of my preseason team included Marshall, but then he obviously started the season late due to his foot injury, which also did flare up again a few weeks ago, but seems to be over that for now and hitting some solid form. Only 14 disposals on the weekend, but 11 of them were contested. 22 hit-outs, a few clearances, so didn't set the world on fire, but more than good enough for a spot in our forward lines. I'd love to trade him in, but not an option for me until after the bye, I think. Look, short but not too sweet when it comes to the 500k plus forward discussion this week. And on to the forwards, 250 to 500k. Jermaine Jones has actually pleasantly surprised me. A really solid couple of weeks. Now has a break-even of -47. He's hit the scoreboard. Nice left foot on him. Exciting type player, but such an awkward price and not a realistic trade-in target for mine, given the fact that he's already at 269k. If you jumped on him early, though, well done. Charlie Cameron, one of the best goal celebrators in the game. Love when he revs a Harley up, because that means that he's in some pretty good form. A superb game from him over the weekend, but be prepared for some scores in the 50 also. Not consistent enough to be a decent option. I think he's a little bit trappish. Jordan Gowie, just no. No, don't do it. Don't do it. NDHP. He played his one good game that he plays every couple of months. Do not expect this consistent form from Jordan De Gowie. I just don't think that it will happen. You cannot rely on this bloke. Bergman looked like a failed rookie at the start, but turned out to be really successful. Definitely keep. Don't trade out yet. Anthony Scott, now a pretty reliable on-field rookie. Look, I was expecting mostly 50s from him, but he's really hit form in the last few weeks, averaging 71 points. He loves to kick a goal, officially good job security now, and he has cemented his spot in the best 22. And I tell you what, for a premiership favourite, what a wonderful effort. He seems to start well and fade late, but it was good to see on the weekend that he had a solid last quarter. So I'd say keep for as long as you can, and his DPP status will come in really handy. Archie Perkins, a big part of Essendon's future. Keep for now and trade when the time is right. Not a bad looking rooster either. This bloke has a fair bit going for him in life, I think. Ah, man. From trap to possible buy now. This has never happened before. 1 minute it's yes, the next minute it's no. I'm pulling my hair out with this pick. It's keeping me up at night. I feel that if I trade him in, he gets injured next round, drops to 30. And I feel if I pass on him, he'll average 110 for the rest of the season. It's like the old Clint Eastwood line. Do you feel lucky, punk? Well, I haven't been too lucky this year, so I don't like my chances, but it is a selection that's dividing the Supercoach community, and I can see why. This is why some people are not buying an Aaron Hall ticket. Durability, cross. Past consistency, cross. Past reliability, cross. Two-way running, cross. But then we have the passengers on the Aaron Hall train, led by Captain JD. Natural talent, tick. Job security, tick. Friendly role, tick. Disposal pig, tick. Scoring potential for current price, I think it's another tick. And this is why I'm still sitting on the fence a bit with this one. So much to like, yet a lot to worry about. Is it worth the stress? Will this be an absolute roller coaster? Look, we can't be certain for sure, but this is the thing. Who else do we like in the forward line? Our options are so limited. With so many of the Uber premiums being injured, it's now about looking for the next best option at an attractive or friendly price. And it pains me to say it, and I may live to regret this decision, but I think Hall is probably the man that fits the bill. In his current role, he can average 30 disposals in his sleep, can make some mistakes with the ball in hand, which can obviously affect his efficiency, but should make those points back 30 seconds later when the ball's pumped back into the Roos backline. Rebounding, kicking, North backman, where all the action is, let's be honest, is a perfect role for Supercoach. And look what's happened with Jay-Z. So, given the fact many of us are looking to get a rookie off-field in our forward line, it really is rookie roulette down there because, at least in our mids we have Powell and Jordan, but up forward apart from Warner, there are just no reliable rookie options. So, I think this is the move for me. I can't believe it, and call me crazy because I probably am. But for his price, low break-even, scoring potential in my forward line, it's likely that he comes into my side this week. He could make 100k also, which some rookies aren't even making at the moment. So a 50-50 call. You'll either love it or you'll hate it, but certainly arguments either way. Benny Brown, was thinking about him pre-season, but skip for me. Joey Danaher playing really well up forward with the ruck relief role. Had him all pre-season. Joey, shattered I didn't end up starting him, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't fit him in to my starting side. McRae and Danaher instead of Neil and Spuddy Dow. Jeez, imagine my ranking then. Much, much higher, but it is what it is, and you got to live with your own decisions. But definitely keep Joey for now. Reece Matheson, beast mode. My wife's favourite player, actually calls him her boyfriend. She must like blokes with rough-looking heads, I suppose. But look, he's an interesting short-term selection. He has stepped in for Lockheed Mcneil to help fill the void on the inside. Fagan actually labelled him as one of the unluckiest players in the AFL during the past 2 years due to our solid depth and lack of injuries. It was almost impossible for him to break into the side, but now his opportunity is here. You may not think it, but he's actually a really hard-working and professional trainer who is sort of in the Benny Keys mold. He's tough, contested, will leave nothing in the tank each week. Not the most talented type players, Keys and Matheson, not the cleanest, but you'll get 100% effort from them. The obvious downside to this pick is when Neil comes back, he most likely goes out, but he's currently preferred over Dev Robinson for that inside role for now anyway, and could average 80 to 90, maybe up to 95 to 100 at the absolute best. Has DPP, which is handy, good job security in the short term, but is that enough to warrant selecting him? Probably not, but wouldn't be surprised to see him averaging in the top 10 forwards whilst he's in the side. And speaking of Dev, yeah, look, I briefly mentioned him above. Love him as a player, has a really bright future, but at his price, no way you trade him in. You may even look to move him on in the next couple of weeks, depending on form. But if given more opportunity, then he'd be a much better pick. I did say if Matheson was named in the side when Neil went out, then I wouldn't be trading in Dev. And yeah, I think that's probably been a decent call because Dev's scoring, yeah, his ceiling's just not high enough, I don't think, in the role that he's currently playing. Jezza Cameron, another interesting selection. Look, I'll be completely honest, I can't stand him after he gave my man Harris Andrews bleeding to the brain in, look, really, what can only be described as an extremely weak act, a couple of years ago. But get over that. Taking away my personal bias, he did play a super game on the weekend. Kicked a nice bag, high disposal count, was active in moving up the ground, worked well in tandem with Tomahawk, but could be a roller coaster ride, and he's bound to drop a stinker here and there. At his price, and with the lack of options, he may be someone you want to take a look at. Does have a friendly buy also, so certainly some upside there. And Zach Bailey, look, I love this man also. Consistency has been his major issue, and disposal efficiency can let him down, but a nice price, has a solid-ish type role, a nice couple of weeks, and Neil out gives him slightly more responsibility through the midfield, but similar to Dev, with Matho in, my interest has declined, and Hall is probably the better selection. Darcy Cameron, in career best form due to getting some more opportunity, but better options for 50k more in my opinion. Bailey Dale, now certainly a realistic pod option to bring in. A nice roll down back, a distributor, prefers to kick rather than handball. The main issue for me is how does he look with Bailey Williams back on the side? He may affect his scoring in a negative way, or he could have no impact at all on his potential output and average, but I'm finding it too hard to get a solid read, so I'm staying away, but it would be worth doing a little bit more digging and seeing if he'll be viable for your side. Shy Bolton, exciting, electric, damaging, kicks long, hits a scoreboard, a highlight machine, was my best buy in the forward line last week, and he did deliver. Unfortunately though for new owners, he also delivered a punch to the jaw on Saturday night. Unlike Peanut Laddams and Sydney Stack, I'm not going to put the Peanut or NDHP symbol on him. He was sticking up for a mate's girlfriend, and it seems like some knobs were just trying to cause some trouble. He's only human, and it wasn't like some sort of drunken rampage where he was a root cause of the problem. But the question now is, do you trade him out if you're a current owner? It's such a tough call. It depends on a lot of things, like your forward bench coverage. Is he out for 3 weeks? Is he out for 4 weeks? That could be the basis of your decision to ultimately hold or trade. How many trades have you got? Look, if he's out for 4 weeks, it's basically a non-negotiable trade for mine. You just have to get rid of him. You can't be holding someone at that price for a month on your bench. It's just too risky. Remember, some of these Richmond players will be back in the side by then, so does he lose some of that midfield time? It is a possibility. So all I can say to owners is bad luck, as he seemed like a really inspired selection. The Tomahawk, below par season from him, but hit form on the weekend alongside Jeremy Cameron. One of the best kicks of the year from the boundary with a set shot drop punt that worked through the air, that Hawkins way. I'd probably take Cameron ahead of him, but I'm not a huge fan of either. Orazio, probably time to move him on. You could keep him though. His buy is okay, so he can cover during the main 2 buys. DPP could come in handy with a Cox, for example, but yeah, if you want to chop him, I'm certainly okay with that. Hind, now this bloke's similar to Tom Atkins. Look, he's a consistent type scorer, but he lacks a ceiling to produce those 100 plus scores which slightly puts me off. But a nice role, exciting player, loves to run and carry, take the game on, almost an upgrade on Sard the way he's playing at the moment. So Essendon will be wrapped with that. And what piques my interest though is the fact that George is a fan of him and likes the selection. Now, if the great man George is into a particular player, then take note. Certainly take note. Look, I went through some of them as last week. Seems like a pretty safe 90 average. Is that enough for you? If it is, I suppose feel free to jump on. Warner, he's slowed up, but my plan is still to hold him for as long as I can. I think he's a reliable on-field option, entrenched in Sydney's best 22 in a midfield role. He's projected to lose some cash, but that's fine for me. I value his on-field contribution to my forward line highly, but I can also see why people are looking to get him out, because if you go purely by the numbers, he is absolutely right for the picking. You know, time to send the cow to the market. But personally, I'm a big fan of Warner and hoping he bounces back with an 80 plus. At the same time, also fine to trade if you just want to cash him out now before he leaks anymore. Cox, I value his job security extremely highly, but again, the numbers suggest that you can move him on now. And Jarman Impey, what a man he is. Found the pill with ease on the weekend. I think it was 10 disposals by quarter time. There was a moment in the third quarter where he handballed, kept gut running, received again, disposed of it efficiently, and kept sprinting forward to try to get to the end of it again. Brilliant running and effort it was. 2 minutes later, takes advantage of a free kick, slots through a goal. A few minutes later, again, a terrific chase down tackle. Just a spectacular all-round game from him. He's established himself as a forward premium this year and has proven to be an inspired starting selection. Tommy Atkins, just realised the time. Jeez, I better fly through this. Look, as I said before, he's similar to a Nick Hine type selection in that he doesn't have a massive ceiling, but he should give you about an 85 to 90 average from here on in, you'd think. Now, Cozzy Pickett, this is pretty harsh, but I am putting the trap on him just in case anyone's thinking of bringing him into their side. I just don't think that he's going to be viable. 3-round average, now, of 73, so I just wouldn't look to go there. It's the same as Harry Mackay, a pod, but no for me. Dane Zorko, look, you can buy him now. You can keep him on your watch list. His break-even's 95, which is right on his average, so I have realised also I've stuffed up the colours there. Apologies for that. And no DPP there also, which is a little bit frustrating. So, yeah, sorry about that. But, yeah, with Zorko, I think he's okay to get in. It's okay to skip on him. I've said a lot about him in the last few weeks. Tom McDonald, I'd be a little bit too scared to go there myself. Steel Sidebottom, I'm really not a huge fan of. I'm worried about his role moving forward. So, is Bucks going to send him into the forward line and play the majority of the time there, later on this season, in the next couple of weeks? We're just not sure with Sidebottom. And look, if you feel that you've got a good read on his role and you believe that that's going to be attending a large amount of CBAs, then go for it. But I haven't got that read and I just can't trust Nathan Buckley at this stage. Toby Green, no more in DHP, I don't think, for Green. Look, in the past, we know what he's been capable of and, those silly acts before, but I've mentioned a couple of times now that the captaincy, I think, has really helped Green to mature. I think he's a natural leader and probably a better captain than Cogs, to be quite honest. But look, would I bring him into my side? I would consider it, but at 484,000, he can drop a stinker from time to time. He's an okay option, but I don't love it. Dusty. Clearly my worst trade of the year. This bloke is now 442k with a break-even of 159. A 3-round average that you wouldn't even be that impressed with for a 123k to 200k type rookie. Look, that foot issue must be lingering. It must be, because he just hasn't got up for a game. Look, mind you, he was on 30 points at quarter time and then ended up with a score in the 60s. So, did he go too hard and the foot just got really sore? I'm not too sure. Richmond got smashed, so it's understandable that not many of the Tigers scored overly well this week. So, we certainly had some mates with him this week, Dusty. But I have, and I mentioned this in a round review, maybe given the wrong advice. I've just said hold No way that you trade him out and all the rest. But, yeah, with what he's producing at the moment, oh, damn. You can't bring him in at the moment. You just can't, because there's no reason to. He's dusty. We bring him in for the name, and I'd just simply wait until we see some decent form from the man and then look to bring him in then. So as a non-owner, you're laughing at the moment. And if you started with him, you're not that happy, but you still got those couple of nice scores in rounds 1 and 2. And if you're like me and you jumped on board after round 2, it's been an absolute nightmare. I said it last year, never again am I bringing this bloke in at any early stage of the season. And Tex Walker, isn't this unfortunate? So depending on the time that you brought Tex in, if you waited a week or two after his first couple of price rises, then you are losing big time at the moment, because his break even is now 178. He's projected to go 68, which I think is probably a realistic score for this week. If he gets that, down 48k. So, well, we're getting to that 370k mark, and it will be a bit of a fail, won't it? So I think he's certainly on the chopping block this week. You may have other issues, you may have other problems, but given the fact he's got a 3-round average of 58, I think that this is a pretty big problem that you do need to address. Now, it's easy for me because I'm not a Tex owner, but hasn't he gone from hero to zero in just the last fortnight? So if this trend continues and that scoring continues to go on a downward spiral, you're going to basically lose all the money that you've made on him. So I'm pretty firm on trading Walker this week. But if you've got some desperate holes elsewhere, then maybe you could keep him. But be expected for him to be best case scenario, absolute best case scenario, highest 300s by the end of the week. And we'll finish with the forwards under 250k. Thanks for sticking with me. Caleb Poulter, my best buy this week. Watched an interview with him on the Sunday Footy Show, I think it was. Sounded like a bit of a bogan, which I like. Got a good feeling about him. Big tick with DPP status, so available in our forward line or midfield. Should cement a spot on that wing, particularly with Murphy out next week. But the Pies do have a few players that can step into that wing role. He's got a nice long left boot on him. The flying mullet, quickly becoming a fan favourite. An 81 last week, so nice ceiling. It was against North though, so don't expect 80s every week, but hopefully a 65-ish average is now the question. I think Collingwood need to keep playing this bloke and get as many games as possible into him, and they now need to look at who's going to take them forward in the future. And it's players like Poulter, McRae, Henry, even Bianco, who smashed it out of the park in the VFL this week, that are going to be part of their next premiership tilt. So I like the boy, as Bert Newton would say, and shout out to Bert. Terrible news about his leg. Get better soon, legend. And Poulter will be coming into my side this week. So the best buy in our forward lines. The man below him, I still have the buy now symbol on him, just in case you need to downgrade a forward and you went early on Poulter last week. If you didn't and you need to choose out of the two, highly recommend going with Poulter. But with Owies, he's got some advantages to him. He's hit the scoreboard on multiple occasions in the first couple of weeks. Low possession, big impact type player. The main issue for Owies is the fact that there are other options on the bubble this week. Poulter particularly in our forward line, but you've also got, RCD, Burns in the mids as well, so we can't get everyone. And look, on most other weeks, I think it'd be an okay option, but I can't see many coaches taking him over a Poulter type. My other concern is how his scoring will be affected if he doesn't manage to snag a couple of goals. He'll definitely have games where he doesn't score goals, which could lead to some, 25 to 40 type scores and really hold his cash gen. I think he's played well though, and short-term JS seems pretty good, but his role isn't great for SuperCoach, and as I said before, expect to see some low scores from time to time. If you're in desperate need of a forward rookie option and you went early on Poulter, then you could bring him in. Zack Sproul, I've got the poo sign there. I just don't think he's going to be a viable rookie for us this year. Harry Jones, been in some pretty good form. Just keep watching him. Waterman, praying that he comes in, possibly for Stringer this week. Not overly confident though. R2-D2, what a disaster of a trade this was. Did have Farah. as the best buy last week. Went against my own advice, as I mentioned in my round review. Bought in R2. Please come in this week. North do have a couple of injuries. Emerson Jekka, got the poo symbol on him. Just do not look to go there. Now, Rowie, he could be on the chopping block if you need an upgrade or you need to get someone or a rookie off your field in your forward line. But he's now hopefully got some money to make. Break even of 23. We have seen some scores like your 29-30 types. I understand that. But hopefully, even if he goes around a 60-odd, he'll still make us some cash. So I say keep him for the next couple. Assess how he goes. But again, if you want to chop him this week, that's also okay. McCreary, think he had a 33 on the weekend, so that will hold his cash gen. But what he's got going for him is his job security. I think he's played really well. Hasn't necessarily translated into great Supercoach scores the last couple of weeks. Has been a little bit quieter than usual, but don't look to trade him out now. Just watch how he goes and look to get him out whenever it suits. Jai Farah. So turned out to be an okay selection, much better than R2 at this stage anyway. I was saying the opposite last week when R2 scored more, but at least Farah is playing and in their 22 at the moment. So you've missed the boat on him. There's no way that you trade him in, but if you did get him a couple of weeks ago, then it's looking okay at the moment. Brockman, geez, I hope he plays this week. I'm really not sure. Been waiting for him to play for a few weeks now, but he's on the chopping block, I think, this week. He's a non-playing rookie, so if you're not confident that he'll get back into the side any stage soon, then he's probably not going to be there to cover for us during the buys, and that's really concerning. So if you're trading out a Brockman this week to someone like a Poulter, at least you'd be hoping that he'd be in the best 22, at least up until his round 14 buy. Poulter I'm talking about here. So if you want to get rid of Brockman, get rid of him, but if he does play this week, I'd be holding myself. And Braden Campbell, I think it's almost getting close to a must trade with this guy. Look, 235,000. He has lost some cash, so you may be willing to keep on to him, given the fact that Sydney do have a pretty friendly fixture to end the, well, not to end the season, sorry, over the next 4 to 5 weeks. So personally for me, I'd be chopping him and getting another bloke in. He's got DPP, which is handy. I've just realised I haven't even put the DPP symbols on these blokes with their, mid forwards and all that. I apologise for that. I've just realised that now when I mentioned it. But yeah, look, long story short, you go Poulter easily as your number one forward rookie option on the bubble this week. Owie's second, and there really is no third that I'd look to bring in. So that's it for this week, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Good luck with all of your trade-ins. Are you going with Aaron Hall? Look, I still don't know 100% if I am or not, but I'm leaning that way, which is a really scary thought. Also, really looking forward to catching up with George and Spills and Eno on Monday night. We're going to do a bit of a Q&A. I don't know if it's going to be pre-recorded or live. We'll have to work that one out, but really looking forward to that and having good chat with the great man George himself. So take care, guys. Hope all is well, and I'll see you soon in the next one. Cheers. Bye.